All right. Hello, everybody who's joining now from the waiting room. As usual, we're going to take just a couple minutes and kind of let everyone join and get in and get settled before we get going. I see some friendly faces coming into the chat here. All right. Let's see. Got Stuart, we got Mike Beltraki, Russ from our team popping in. Love that. Hello to Amy. In case anyone has their audio off, I'm gonna pop a quick hello to everyone. Really? Mike, that's very interesting. I know that Mike Todd from our team was actually in Vail just last week. It's unlikely it was him, but it's fascinating that it could have been him. All right. I'm going to give us just another minute for folks to join and then we will jump in. I appreciate everyone's patience. Is everyone having a good day so far? Feel free to let us know in the chat if you're feeling friendly. All right. Well, then without further ado, we will go ahead and jump in. Um, Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Q1 2026 Real Insights webinar. Thank you so much for joining. I know everyone has busy days, so I'm grateful you're choosing to spend some of that time with us. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Britt Greer. I am the Director of Growth here at Realtek. Today, I'm joined by Amber Martin, our Client Success Manager, and Hannah Dylewski, our Director of Marketing Services. Super, super smart folks from our team. We've been working together for a really long time, and I'm excited to see them show some of this data and talk about some really strong marketing strategies that they have for you to kind of go after some of the opportunities from this data. Give them a chance to say hello here.
Hi, everybody. Pleasure to be here with you.
Hey everyone, love to see the familiar faces. Really excited to work through this content with you today. Again, as Brett said, if you have any questions, feel free to add those to the chat. You have access to us outside of this, so please feel free to reach out. But again, just looking forward to working through this content with you and hearing your thoughts and questions.
Yep, absolutely. Put questions in the chat throughout because I'm going to be on as kind of a moderator for the conversation. We'll probably save a lot of the questions towards the end, but if you have one that's timely and we're doing good in terms of the pace, I'll probably try to go ahead and just pause this and ask those questions right then. So please don't hesitate to put them in there if you get towards the end and you have to run. Make sure you put a question in the chat. We'll answer it. You'll be able to see the answer in the recording as well. All right. So today we're going to be talking about some key trends and data points that are kind of shaping the digital environment for vacation rental managers. We're pulling data in this presentation all from our aggregated website and marketing data sets. So this is all real data coming from real people and real property managers who do exactly what you do. We're looking at the way people are using the search dates, the filters on your websites, and what those results are dictating. Um, we're also going to be spending some time towards the end. Hannah is going to be sharing some really great up-to-date information about everyone's favorite buzzy thing, AI, search marketing, what our strategies are, what we're seeing in terms of shifts and trends. And so be sure to stay to the end if you can to get that information from her. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Amber Martin to get us started on the search demand trends here.
Awesome. Well, all right, everybody. To kick things off, we're going to do a quick industry overview. What we're seeing on this slide is a snapshot of April through June search trends, and it's highlighting three key things: how long guests are looking to book, how much demand we're seeing, and what those nightly rates are looking like. So starting with April, we're seeing here a median length of stay at 12 nights. And then as we shift into May, it is actually jumping up a bit at 16. And then in June, dropping down again to 11 nights. And then for our search demand, we have 14% in April, shifting down just by 1% to 13 in May. And in June, back up again to 14. And then our rates are also kind of ebbing and flowing here. We have April at 319, May at 344, and June at $429.
Yeah, and
So
a quick thing to clarify, sorry to interrupt you there. Amber,
You're okay.
what I meant to call out from the beginning though is that our search demand numbers, this is based off the last 6 months of data. So this 14%, 13%, 14%, that is the portion of searches in those months from the last 6 months of data. So very, very representative of what people are looking for right now and recently.
So what this chart is really showing us is that our travel behavior is becoming a little bit more balanced as we move through spring and into early summer. The next couple of months, we're seeing longer, more flexible stays, likely a lot of guests who have taken advantage of shoulder season pricing, or even those who have taken advantage of spring and Easter breaks in April. And then for June, trips become just a little bit shorter, but they're taking up just as much as our search demand as we saw in April, which is really telling us that guests are booking both last minute stays and starting to plan ahead for summer. So our strategy really needs to support both of these behaviors. Right now, because we're seeing those longer stays at a lower median price point, it's making a really great opportunity to lean into those extended stays as we finish out the season, whether that's through some segmented email messaging, running promotions, or even as simple as just showcasing in your marketing that a longer stay offers a little bit of a better value. And then in June, where we're seeing the same demand, this is where we really make sure that we're pricing confidently and highlighting that value even more and really focusing that and maximizing our summer. Now that was giving us a pretty strong high level overview of how demand was trimming overall, but as we all know, each of those markets behave a little bit differently. So we're going to break it down even further and take a closer look at how that plays out for each, starting with our beaches. On this first chart, what we're seeing is a combination of two things. Each bar is representing the percent of searches for that month, while our lines are showing the average length of stay tied to those searches. So it's giving us a really helpful view into both what a guest is looking for and how long they're looking to stay while they're there. Here we're seeing in April, it's taking up about 15% of searches with an average stay of 12 nights. In May, demand is still strong at 13.9% with a length of stay increasing at 16 nights. One of the more noticeable shifts on the slide, actually. And then in June, demand actually is matching what we see in May at 13.9, while the average stay is coming down slightly to 12 nights. And July, search demand dipped slightly to 11.9% with an average stay of 10 nights. So what this really means is that our demand is staying fairly consistent across the next few months, but the length of stay begins to soften as we move closer to summer. Really telling us that summer demand isn't something that's coming, it's already being shaped right now. So we want to do everything we can to maximize on that summer season in our marketing currently. This is where a targeted email can become really powerful. I would recommend segmenting to past summer guests who haven't booked yet, and even people who have booked similar stay patterns with some urgency messaging around summer availability and giving them some nice reasons to go ahead and lock in those dates now. And I will highlight that the earlier you start featuring this availability in paid search, the less you'll have to compete for it later. So I would recommend going ahead and making sure if you're not already featuring all of the availability you have in Google Ads. And while looking at this, I will call out that any remaining spring inventory you have, it's a really great time to offer last minute deals or even run gap night offers for existing bookings, especially in between those longer stays where you have smaller gaps to fill to really capitalize on everything and make everything we're seeing now a little bit more effective.
Yeah, good stuff there, Amber. And there was two things that really stuck out to me that you said, and I want to make sure we kind of highlight those two independent strategies. With summer demand being pretty high, we're seeing it out in advance. We know that it's going to be peak for the beach market, making sure that you are pushing on that hard now, that you're using your paid search, your email to really go after it. Specifically, though, you said something great, which is that featuring the availability in paid search is going to get more expensive long term because that cost per click is going to go up. And so if right now you can get out ahead of that last minute push, you got a great chance to get those in. The other thing that you said that I want to circle back to is you talked about May and having that increased average length of stay all the way up to 16, some of the reasons that might be there. Can you were handed there kind of recap what the best strategy is to go after those longer stays and take advantage of that for next month's bookings? think you had said something about the importance of making sure we're looking at gap nights. People are looking for 16 nights. And so you got these longer stays. It's going to leave little gaps in the calendar. So making sure you're going after those with a gap night filler. Correct.
Absolutely. And even if you have longer stays, any promotion that you can offer to kind of secure that last minute deal. Since we are still seeing people looking for those dates, it's really showcasing that people are still looking to book same month bookings and even ahead into May.
Okay,
They're
awesome.
really easy opportunities to be able to capture those specific date ranges and leverage it in your marketing specifically, whether that's in an email campaign, whether that's in specific date call outs within your Google ad campaigns. There's ways to promote these gaps that you are experiencing to be able to close in on that opportunity. So certainly if you use us, we collaborate with you on that front. But if you do it independently, really just pulling out those specific date ranges into your own marketing materials to make sure we're bringing visibility to the forefront of those searches.
Yeah, awesome. So then let's take a look now over at the rent forecast for the beach market and kind of how that coincides with this demand.
Awesome. Well, on this chart, we're really looking at our nightly rates over time. And I will call out that I am going to focus on the medians here and throughout, since it gives us a clearest picture of what's typical across the market. Here we're looking at the first few months. In April, we're seeing a median nightly rate of 357. In May, that ticks up slightly to 368. And then as we move into June and July, there's a much more noticeable jump. June is increasing to 449 per night, and July climbs even higher to 490. So this really lines up really well with what we saw on the previous slide. Demand is staying relatively steady, but as we move into June and July, that nightly pricing increases significantly. Even though those length of stays are starting to come down, guests are still willing to book a little bit, pay a little bit more to book those peak summer dates. My recommendation right now is that while rates are a little bit lower and stays are longer, it's a great time to focus on driving that volume, like Hannah said. But we really want to make sure that June and July is our primary focus. We want to be ahead of when those dates come. One thing I will call out is this is where your pricing and marketing really need to work together. So if I'm a property manager, I'm thinking about making sure I'm not underpricing my peak dates, any of those holidays or events you have coming up, adjusting my minimum nightly stays strategically to make sure they match up with the demand that we're seeing, and aligning my marketing with higher value. We want to highlight things like premium experiences, things that make your location special, and again, just any availability that we have for summer. Because if our rates are increasing, we want to make sure that our message is reflecting the value of booking with you over somebody else. But it is just important here that we want to make sure that we're leveraging that urgency in our marketing. Summer rates are increasing because that demand and occupancy is rising. So there is a lot of time here to really actively push those dates down, so that we're ahead of them and not waiting until they're right in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said something that I totally agree with there, which is that coordinating your rates and your availability with your priorities in terms of the calendar where you have gaps right now is such a powerful lever that you can pull. I just want to pop this into the chat real quick. I'm actually doing a webinar with Amber Prickett from Price Labs talking about this exact thing. If you're going to run a special trying to address a problem in your marketing, where can you adjust your pricing with dynamic rates to keep your keep your profit high while also generating incentive that are going to fill those dates, generate occupancy, and then increase the demand and maybe the rate in some of those bigger dates. So I'm going to pop that in here now, and I'll let Amber take back over here.
Awesome. Well, finally, for our beach markets, let's shift and take a look at how our guests are actually converting in this market. On this slide, we're showing our bedroom performance by we're showing our booking performance by bedroom count, and we've split that into two time frames to really highlight how this behavior is looking for these two different booking windows. So on the left, we have April and May, which what is really standing out here is that the 2 and 3 bedroom properties are driving the majority of our bookings. As we see here, our 3-bedroom homes are leading about 33% of our bookings at a strong conversion rate. 2-bedroom is also performing really well with 22% of our bookings, and 4 bedrooms are close behind with 19. But then as we shift a little bit into June and July, we're seeing a similar pattern, but it becomes a little bit more defined. So our three-bedroom homes continue to dominate 32% of our bookings. Two bedrooms have increased slightly here to around 23%, and our four bedrooms have grown to 20% of our bookings. Now, from a strategy standpoint, this data gives us some really clear direction. Your two four bedroom properties should be front and center, since that where we're seeing the highest conversion of bookings. So this is where we really want to focus on highlighting available units in our email campaigns and making sure again that we're incorporating everything here into paid search. This also applies to your website experience. I would make sure that your highest converting property types are really easy to find and are front and center for all of your guests. I would recommend like changing the graphic shortcuts on your homepage. Now, all of this is to say that we don't want to ignore the rest of our inventory. Instead, this is giving us another really good opportunity to segment your marketing by bedroom count. Rather than one broad campaign, we can build out separate campaigns tailored to different types. Like our smaller units, we're going to focus on couples, short getaways, just quick weekends away. And then our larger homes really promote group travel, multi-family stays, and that higher value of booking a larger home.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the graphic shortcuts and kind of, putting your most popular rental types front and center for people, there's kind of two things to keep in mind there. One being, demand data for the beach market shows that these are going to be your most popular, bedroom count, but also, especially if you're a Realtek client, your marketing manager can help you with it, is looking at your analytics account and just seeing where you have the highest level of demand or where you have maybe the highest conversion rate and making adjustments to what you're putting front and center based off that. So that's a good thing to kind of be paying attention to on the marketing side and also on the website conversion rate side. We'll switch us
Awesome. Well,
over to the lake market, right?
awesome. Sounds great. Looking at this data, calling out one of the biggest differences that we're seeing right away is how more concentrated this demand is. So in April, we have our searches accounting for 9.5% with an average stay of 8 nights. In May, demand is increasing to about 12.1% with stays at 7 nights. But then as we move into peak summer, June jumps up to 21% of our search demand, and July is increasing even further to 22.4. So unlike our beach markets where demand was a little bit more spread out, lake demand is really heavily concentrated in those peak summer months. But at the same time, that length of stay is remaining fairly consistent, hovering just between the 7 and 8 across all of our months. What this is really telling us is that lake markets are more seasonally driven. Guests who are booking around peak summer a little bit more standardized and are typically looking for that week-long stay, which really helps us out. It creates a little bit more of a predictable booking pattern, but also a more competitive one. So instead of our demand being spread out, we're really competing for visibility and bookings during a really specific time frame. From a strategy standpoint, this gives us a really strong opportunity to capture and convert summer demand early, since that is where the majority of our bookings will happen. So if you're not already, I would really recommend starting marketing now. I would focus on incorporating 7 night searches directly into your marketing, again, in paid search site links, in your just all ad extensions, email campaigns, and even in social. We want to make it as easy for guests to book the full week stay by aligning our pricing and availability and messaging around that pattern. So to clearly showcase the value of booking a full week and not just a few nights.
Yeah, exactly. People are showing in droves for this market that it's about a week that they're looking to come and stay. And so, link them directly to 7 night weeks that lay out really cleanly in your calendar based off, if it's a Friday to Saturday, whatever that night range is, you see people stay with you most often. Lead with those in the marketing that you do. Link directly to those search results to take out that friction of trying to go and search by date specifically.
All right. So now that we've looked at how pricing is trending in the lake markets, let's see how everything is lining up here with the demand that we just saw. So in April, we're seeing a median nightly rate of about $175. In May, that jumps up pretty significantly to around $259. June increases again to $396 per night. and July climbs even higher to 483. Again, really reinforcing everything we saw on the previous slide. Lake markets are really concentrated around summer, and that pricing flows that's with that same pattern. So we have a really clear ramp up as we're reaching peak demand. Just for example, just looking at this month, the median is 175 per night, and we jumped by $308 to 483 in just a few months.
Yeah, maybe a thing that people could do, Amber, especially with, April and May being priced a good bit lower because it's not right in the spear of peak season. If you're in a market maybe where you're getting warmer weather earlier, push in those last minute dates to try to see if the savings getting out ahead of the summer, you might be able to get even more temperate weather that's more appropriate. So that's probably just a destination thing. But are we doing that for any lake marketing clients right now that you know of?
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually lean to Hannah a little bit more on this one, but that is something that we often recommend, just making sure that we're tailoring everything to each location.
Yeah, I think the biggest importance is tailoring to the location, understanding your audience, who you're targeting, and what exactly it is that you're targeting. So I think, as we not only, like Britt had mentioned, lean into the warmer weather, I think just taking into consideration the economy and the things that we're dealing with and focusing on drive-to markets and trying to capture those people who do have the availability to travel to your location last minute, I think would be a great recommendation and a good place to start, just given that the cost of airfare is increasing, cost of gas is increasing. So again, leaning towards those bordering states, people who are close to you, I think would be a really wise way to segment that market specifically. Gosh, it really does remind me kind of COVID times whenever we were really having to get creative and focus on in-state campaigns. I think that is a big opportunity that we have ahead of us to be able to continue to focus on in-state campaigns, just given kind of what we're experiencing in general. And I think some of us on the marketing side have already started tapping into that, just understanding, some of these fly to markets, really getting creative on that side. And then the drive to markets, also just making sure we're maintaining kind of that reach to the people who we know would drive to those locations during that time period.
Yeah, awesome. That makes a ton of sense. That's certainly something we shall be preparing for, right? It's a little bit more constricted demand based off of travel costs. It's a great call out.
Now we're going to shift to our booking rates. Just like before, we've broken this into two time frames. Right now, we're seeing fairly balanced distribution across our 2, 3, and 4 bedroom homes. 2 bedrooms are taking the lead here with 31% of the bookings, 3 bedrooms close behind at 29, and 4 bedrooms following in at around 25%. So again, we're seeing that mid-sized property performing really well here. As we move into June and July, it actually becomes even more concentrated. 3 bedroom homes are really taking off here, making up 40% of our bookings. And 2 and 4 bedrooms are still strong, coming in at around 20% each. One interesting call out here is that our 5 bedroom homes are actually seeing a big increase to 17% of our bookings for later in our peak summer months. So what this really tells us is that while lakes are favoring this mid-sized inventory in April and May, there's a little bit more traction for larger homes as we're looking at summer stays, which makes sense. This is a really popular market for families gathering and group trips, especially for big summer holidays like 4th of July. So from a strategy standpoint, I would recommend if you have really strong availability right now for those 3 bedroom homes, this is where you really want to lean into it heavily and featuring those units prominently in all of your marketing. If you have a little bit less availability here, it's a really great opportunity to shift focus to 4 bedrooms or larger homes that are at a comparable price point and position them as a really nice alternative for those who are looking for that 3 bedroom home.
Yeah.
And oh, you go ahead, Britt.
So, no, yeah, apologies. Yeah, I was just going to tack on to it's important to consider with your website. I know we have a lot of real tech clients on, so your sites do this. If you're not a real tech client, maybe take a look and make sure that yours does this. If you're in a market like this where you have a big disparity in your peak of what your bedroom count is, that really, really drives a lot of your bookings. If you have a bedroom count plus in your search filtering, what that's going to do is it's going to open up your 4 bedroom properties to those who search for three, so that if you have a limited amount of availability, maybe 1 or 2 3 bedroom properties are still available, but you're seeing a lot of searches for those, they're going to be able to look at those 4 bedrooms as well and maybe add on a little bit of extra value. Also, a good spot to maybe even consider if you're in that situation, running some sort of promotion for those who are looking for a 3 bedroom, weren't able to find it when they needed it, but could book a 4 bedroom and you take $100 off as a invitation to come and stay with you anyway.
Absolutely. And then for our even larger homes, the 5 bedroom plus, I would consider targeting campaigns to past guests who haven't booked, highlighting them for group travel, reunions, and again, those fun multifamily stays. Really across the board, this is a really great opportunity to lean into our messaging. Perfect for family trips and room for everybody. Just anything that really highlights what makes these units and properties special.
I'm going to jump in here. Just something else to consider, and something that we've seen strong success doing is, you know who stayed with you in the year of 2025. You know who booked those bigger homes during the summer season. Instead of blasting out an entire email trying to fill that availability, consider segmenting your data to just show who stayed with you in 2025 and who hasn't yet booked their home in 2026 for their summer vacation or their annual family trip that they always go on, and tailor your messaging specifically to those folks. We've seen a lot of really good success in filtering it down as far as the home type or the different amenities or the size of the home. You have control of that currently in your software, and you're able to share those lists with us, or take it internally and do your own email campaign. But we've seen a lot of success in these rebooking campaigns, specifically targeting folks who have stayed with you in the past and who have yet to book their vacation, whether it's in the spring or the summer. So a good piece of advice to make sure you're targeting those folks as we're leading up to that summer season, into that family vacation.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. Um, all right, Amber, we moving over to the mountain data?
Absolutely. Looking at this data, one thing that stands out right away is how much more evenly distributed demand is across the calendar. In April, we're seeing about 10.8 of our searches and an average stay of 10 nights. May dip slightly to around 8.4, but the length of stay actually increases to 14 nights. But then as we move into summer, June comes in at around 10.9% of our searches and stays around 11 nights. And July is increasing slightly to 13.9 with an average stay at 9 nights. So unlike our lake markets where demand was heavily concentrated in summer, mountain markets have a much more spread out and consistent booking pattern throughout the coming months, where we're seeing longer stays overall, especially in months like May. It gives us a little bit of insight into how much more flexible guests are traveling those months. With winter kind of presenting its own challenges due to the lack of snow, it's really attributed to the decreases we've seen overall and in the demand of bookings. Some of these summer demands, some of the summer demand we're looking at now might actually be where it has shifted. Guests who have skipped out on their ski trips might be now opting for something like a 4th of July getaway instead.
A good note there. Probably a lot of opportunity out there from canceled ski trips, people who chose not to book because they knew the weather wasn't going to be where they wanted. Those people are probably itching for stays, right? And so they're probably campaigning to be done around connecting those to availability and the other things that you can do in that destination, right?
Absolutely. And from a strategy standpoint, I would say that this is a little bit less about chasing demand and more about capturing it in multiple forms. There are multiple opportunities throughout the coming months to drive bookings. So this is a really great chance to lean into early booking promotions for guests who are looking for summer stays, while continuing to promote those last minute stays for the next couple of months, where we can showcase the benefits like being around fewer crowds and slightly better rates. I would also recommend building campaigns here around different travel intents and not just around the actual booking itself. So highlighting different units for adventure versus relaxation versus extended stays.
Yeah, I think to double down on that, it's all about the experience, right? What can we build? What is the experience that we're trying to build for this potential guest? So I think just ensuring that you have the content that represents that on your site, that you're not just pigeonholed into being so ski focused, and making sure that you have what are those things that people like to do in your off season, and making sure that you have itineraries built, that you have, the intent, like Amber said, behind why that traveler would be staying in that particular location, and the information supporting what they could do to create that overall experience for that location is extremely important.
Yeah. And also selling to people what they may not be used to experiencing that they're missing out on, but what they could be. Awesome.
Absolutely. Now we'll take a look at how pricing is trending for our mountain markets. Looking at the next few months, in April, the median nightly rate is $300. In May, we're actually seeing a slight dip to around 289. And then as we move into summer, we're again seeing the increases, but a little less severe as we saw in our other markets. July is increasing to 369 per night, or excuse me, June is increasing to 369 per night, and July rises further into 483. So what's really interesting here is that while we are seeing that summer lift in pricing, it's not quite as sharp as we saw in our other markets. Because mountain demand is a little bit more spread out, pricing tends to be a little bit more stable throughout the year, so we don't have those sharp jumps that we saw. It's a more gradual uptick as we get to our peak summer. So I would start thinking of pricing a little bit more about it being reactive and less about and making sure that you're positioning and less about demand-based pricing. And just making sure that you're adjusting around key moments like holidays or any events that are going on in the area where you're expecting a big spike or an influx of travelers. But with this, it
Yeah.
also opens the door to promoting shoulder season travel a little bit more aggressively as we're heading into that, since pricing stays competitive and demand is still there. And I'm so sorry, Brett, I cut you off. You go.
No, no, no. I was just agreeing with what you were saying there. And I was just going to kind of circle back and really clarify what you said there, which is, not to think about your pricing as reactive right now. There is a pretty steady trend of growth in terms of that median nightly rate, which we would typically expect. So don't just worry about demand, worry about what your key moments are. Pick out those dates where people really want to come, call out events, especially when we're talking about experiences, and know that you have a comfortable range right there. I also wanted to call out that whoever has got that really expensive rental in June 2027, send me a direct link, maybe a promo code. I'd love to see the property. That one certainly stands out.
All right. Well, now we can take a look at how guests are actually booking in mountain markets. Again, April through May, we're seeing a strong concentration in those 3 and 4 bedroom homes. 3 bedrooms accounting for 38% of our bookings, and 4 bedrooms are close behind at 36, which is actually one of the higher booking rates on the board. So again, the mid-size inventory is performing really well. As we move into June and July, that pattern shifts a bit. 2 and 4 bedroom homes are taking the lead, each making up 31% of our bookings, and 3 bedrooms still have a really strong visibility, but we're seeing a slight drop in the booking share compared to our earlier months. Overall, bookings are still concentrated in that 2 and 4 bedroom range, which gives us a little bit more, or excuse me, with a little bit more variation than what we saw in our beach or lake markets. So really, this is telling us that mountain markets do still favor those mid-sized properties, but there's a bit more diversity in how guests are booking depending on the time of the year. So here we're seeing a mix of couples, smaller groups, small families, and then some even larger group travel depending on the season, which you see here as we move into summer. From a strategy standpoint, your 2 and 4 bedroom homes should absolutely be your primary focus, just like we've seen in our other markets. But it is also really important to note here that our studio and 1 bedroom properties are capturing 17% of the last minute bookings that we're seeing in April and May, giving us a really good chance to market to a wider range of traveler types. So segmentation actually becomes even more important here. This is a really good place to run targeted email campaigns, again, focusing on couples and quick getaways, and making sure that you're also promoting family and group travel experiences. Mountain markets are really giving us an opportunity to diversify the strategy, so we're not really as locked into a particular traveler type or season like we saw in our other markets.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't want us to skip over a great point you made there about the studio and 1 bedroom rentals up in the next couple months. There's definitely some demand there. It's accounting for a good portion of bookings. And so, if you don't have, excuse me, if you don't have something going out in your marketing right now to try to go fill that, look and see for your personal inventory if you're seeing that same trend. And if you are, really try to go after it if you have those studio and condo rentals to kind of go up there in what's becoming nice temperate weather before the summer rates go up.
Absolutely, completely agree there. And now that we've kind of looked at how that demand, pricing, and booking behavior is varied across those markets, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about what we're seeing in our marketing channels and how they're performing, and ultimately where we see the biggest opportunities to drive more bookings, starting with organic search. On this first chart, what we're seeing here is our overall sessions and how they're trending year over year. And as we can see, they are a little bit lower. For example, in January of 2026, our total traffic is around 6,700 sessions compared to 6,800 in January of 2025. With organic traffic being also down, we have a shift from 2,900 in 2020 to about 2,200 in 2026. So seeing that, and I'm sure you guys are feeling it, the little dip in traffic and visibility that we have coming to the sites. So what this really means when we look here is that we want to focus and make sure that we're driving everything we can to really maximize the value of every visitor. When we shift and look at our conversion rate, there's a really interesting trend where we might expect to see our conversion rate follow the same pattern that we're seeing with our traffic. We're actually seeing a little bit less of a heavy dip in 2026, January. That is, conversion rate is at 0.77% compared to 0.75 in 2025. And even in February, where traffic is dipping about 13% year over year, we're only seeing a slight decrease in our median conversion rate of 0.06%. So with traffic down, again, becomes really critical to maximize the value of every visitor that we do have. And to do this, we have three key areas. We have website functionality and flow, your property details page, and then conversion tools to help re-engage those users. For your website, I would go through the booking path just like a guest would, from your homepage all the way to checkout. See if there are any barriers in this booking path. We want to make it as easy as possible for guests to find the perfect property on both desktop and mobile. And we don't really have to invent the wheel here. If you have a website with Realtech, our sites are built with the primary goal of making booking easy. But if you're not using us for your site, I would take the chance to remove any extra steps or clicks that are bogging down that booking experience. Now on your property details page, we really want to make sure that our property pictures and descriptions are working for us. We want to showcase the best views, the best images that we can for each of our properties so that the guest really knows what they're looking for, and making sure that our descriptions are really propping that up. And if you are a Realtech website client and are looking for a little bit more insight in where we might be able to find gaps in your property descriptions, I would highly recommend trying out our AI property chat. This is a really cool tool that gives guests the chance to write in their own questions about a specific property and gives us a chance to look at those real questions and see where there are opportunities to improve our property details.
Yeah, and I want to call out that I believe Hannah is going to show a little bit later some really great data that kind of supports the impact that that has on conversion rate. So just want to, for anyone considering stepping away, don't, because you're going to see some great stats.
And then finally, you want to make sure that you're understanding your abandon rate so we can see where opportunities are being lost in the booking process. From there, we can leverage conversion tools like booking recovery and send my stay campaigns to re-engage these high intent users who didn't convert right away. And with these campaigns, I would also really recommend that you introduce dynamic promotions within these follow-ups. I would hold off on offers in your initial messaging and reserve them for guests who haven't booked by that final email. This would really help protect your margins while still giving a really strong final opportunity and incentive to convert there.
Yeah, these are all three of these are great places where you can go and you can act on increasing your conversion rate. But kind of circling back to the beginning of what you said there, Amber, I think it's important, especially for non-marketing clients who don't have someone at Realtech or at a different provider who's kind of guiding them through these changes. getting into your analytics and doing a little bit of looking at where people are falling off in the funnel. Where are you losing traffic? Where are you losing bookings? If you're interested in better understanding that and you don't currently, I'm going to put the client success email for Realtek in the chat here in a minute or so. Please email us and we can find time to go look at that with you and help you better understand where the opportunity is. And then also talk maybe more about some of these tools or things that you could do on your side to try to increase the conversion in those stages.
All right, let's shift over to paid search. And we're going to take about a look at how everything is performing and trending there. On the left, we're looking at click-through rate versus cost per click. And on the right, we're seeing our ad revenue compared to our ad spend. We're seeing here a slight dip year over year. For example, in February, our click-through rate went from 10% in 2025 down to just under 9% in 2026. So we've got fewer users that are clicking on ads overall. But at the same time, cost per click has also decreased from $1.68 in 2025 to $1.19 in 2026. And then shifting, when we look at our ad revenue and cost, ad spend has stayed relatively consistent while revenue is slightly down year over year, but it's still holding pretty strong overall. And this is where strategy becomes really important because you can generate more traffic for the same cost. This is a moment to be a little bit more selective and intentional with your targeting. I would prioritize those high intent keywords, refine your targeting to make sure that we're reaching our most qualified users and guests, and make sure your budget is really focused on where you're most likely to convert. Now we're going to take this one step further and take a look at how paid search bookings are pacing.
Yeah, before we switch over, I just want to call out too, when you're looking at those keywords that are the most likely to convert, the two stats that you're generally looking at there are going to be conversion rate and cost per conversion. Would that be accurate for y'all in the way that we're managing our clients right now?
Certainly, that's what informs the decision in terms of, are we expanding what we're doing? Are we refining? Are we adding negative keywords? There's lots of things to consider here, but those two are the primary benchmarks of kind of what dictates what's next and what informs our decision.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
awesome. Yeah. Another good thing to look at is your auction insights as well. If you're managing your own ads, if anybody on here is, make sure you're looking at that impression share so that the campaigns where you have the highest conversion rates are the ones where you're allocating the most budget versus spending it in places where maybe you don't have as much traction because of the spend. So just all things to look at.
As well as gauging too, what are your competitors spending? That's the best way to inform
Totally.
where you sit in that list. I think that is what the first thing is that I look at whenever I am making a budget recommendation for someone that I'm working with is first, well, what are other people in your area spending? And then based on that, based on the impression share, where does it make the most sense for you to be spending in terms of the alignment of everybody else? Because that does matter, because you want to make sure that you have the appropriate amount of budget to be sure that you're maintaining that visibility alongside your competitor throughout the entire day and throughout the entire 31 days of the month, or 30, or whatever the day amount is.
Yeah, totally. I feel like when I was in the client marketing side, I had so many people say to me over time, I just wish I had a better idea for what my competitors were doing, or like what are people in our market doing? If you're in Google Ads right now and you're spending, budget on certain campaigns, you have the opportunity to actually understand that. And so you can't skip on that opportunity.
And tailoring a budget plan that fits your business. It doesn't make sense to spend the same exact amount of money every single month for 12 months out of the year. Understanding your market, understanding your competitors, understanding, the demand and tailoring it to align with that 12-month calendar. So I would recommend that you keep a running list of what's your return on a 12-month basis. This is something that we look at that then we can inform a decision based on, should we scale the budget back? Should we increase your budget, dependent on all of those factors?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, now shifting to look at how those paid search bookings are pacing. The biggest takeaway here is that paid search is still driving a really strong, consistent booking performance, even while the market is shifting. In February, we're seeing 8 median bookings versus 8.5 in 2025. And just to call it out, January actually saw an increase compared to last year with 13 in January of 2026 compared to 7 in January of 2025. So while this does look like a bigger dip on the chart, It actually is pacing pretty well compared to what we saw in February of last year. And then shifting to look at the chart on the right, revenue per booking is actually trending higher year over year, with an average booking amount of 3,407 compared to 3,130 in 2025. So while overall conversion rate is dipped slightly, it's still relatively stable overall. From a strategy standpoint, this is where you really want to lean into what is working. I'll call it again that you really want to focus on that high intent targeting over broad reach, making sure that you're focusing on where people have booked in the past and really digging to your analytics to make really informed decisions there. And also aligning your ad messaging with the value that we've mentioned throughout the webinar. Just making sure that you're emphasizing the importance of booking direct as well. All right. So now we can shift gears again and take a look at our email marketing and how engagement is trending there.
I'm gonna quickly call out, we've got one question that's been put in, and so we're gonna go a little bit into the last 10 minutes to leave time for some of the content here. If you do have questions you're planning to ask, go ahead and pop them in the chat so I can have a feel for how much time you want to leave for that Q&A section. Back over to you, Amber, sorry.
No worries. All right. So now that we're looking at marketing and how engagement is trending, on this chart, we're looking at open rate and click-through rate compared year over year. The biggest takeaway here is that email engagement is actually trending up. In February, open rate has increased from 37% to about 43 this year, and click-through rate is still holding steady at 2%. So not only are more people opening the emails, but engagement is remaining consistent compared to what we saw last year. What this is really telling us is that guests are still really responsive to email, especially when our messaging is relevant and well timed. And in a market where traffic is slightly down, it becomes even more important channel to lean into. The biggest takeaway here is just really to take advantage of everything that you have through segmentation. Make sure you're sending the right message to the right audience, whether it's first-time guests or repeat visitors. And really important to align your campaigns with your booking windows, promoting peak dates early and using email to kind of fill in shoulder season gaps when needed. And one trend I've noticed is that shorter, more focused emails with a clear call to action are performing incredibly well. So don't feel like you have to spend a bunch of time building out a really big, comprehensive email. It is better to get a clear call to action in front of your guests earlier than letting it wait for the perfect newsletter.
Yep, that's a great call out. Doing something's better than doing nothing. And so keep it simple, keep it direct. With that in mind, I'm going to shift us right on over to Hannah, talking about some of these AI trends to make sure we've got enough time to get through that content there. As I've mentioned a couple of times, if you do have any questions, please pop them in. We will make time to answer them at the end.
Hello again, everyone. Pleasure to see you. See some familiar marketing faces out there. Really excited you're here. Definitely going to address the hot topic that everyone wants to constantly learn more about and to understand, big buzzword AI as it relates to search, as it relates to tools and efficiency with your business, what makes the most sense, what we're doing, what you could be doing, what you could use us for to help you on this front. But in general, I know all of these brands are really familiar to you, but just, to take a step back, search engines are evolving. Google, Bing, and other platforms are using AI to pull direct answers instead of just showing a list of links. So I know you all are familiar with seeing that within the different search platforms. What this is doing is ultimately leading to zero-click searches. I think, we're no longer competing to show up in search results. We're competing to be quoted by AI for these answers on Google, Gemini, ChatGPT. I think a really strong stat here is 19% of US travelers have used generative AI to plan a trip. So guests are becoming comfortable with this. They are using it. They are establishing trust and using this as a credible source to help when planning their overall vacation. To break it down a little further, Britt, I'm going to have you pop us to the next slide. Simply another way to interact with the internet is what AI is, which is largely achieved by using what we call LLMs. a large language model. So LLMs are advanced AI systems. They're trained on massive amounts of text. They learn patterns in language so that they can understand questions, generate responses, and reason through information. And those are our chat GPTs of the world. Those are Google Gemini, that's Claude. Those are our LLMs. And so then further building on that, the process of being found in these LLMs is by utilizing GEO, which is different than SEO. GEO is generative engine optimization. So this is the process of making the content so that it is in the preferred format for the LLM specifically. So the biggest points of this, we'll dive into it a little bit later, are essentially structuring your format, structuring your content so that it's formatted in a way that AI can easily read it, making sure it's also easy to retrieve and contextualize so AI understands the meaning of that content. So when you kind of take all of these things, this ultimately helps LLMs include your content accurately in AI generated answers. And as you can see here, this is an example of one of our clients being fed through to the AI overview itself, Yonder Luxury Vacation Rentals. They're a Western North Carolina brand. And ultimately, Google is displaying AI overviews on 21% of all searches. So it's a very big market share on that front. And again, I very much want to reiterate the importance of this just because, as you can see, the sheer landscape of this search results page itself and wanting to make sure that you are being represented in those searches. Britt, if you'll just pop us to the next slide. Couple things here. Moral of the story is search behavior is changing quickly. I will say I did a similar presentation like this at the end of last year in December. Fast forward not even 3 months, and all of these percentages and these numbers have increased. So the biggest thing that I want to call out here is Google, their AI overviews are reducing clicks to that traditional #1 organic result by 58%, which could ultimately be attributed to some of those decreases that we're seeing from our organic search side numbers. They're getting their answer from that overview itself without needing to click on a sponsored ad or find your listing in an organic search result. The other thing here that I want to call out is that means ranking alone is no longer enough. You have to find ways to have that visibility through AI generated answers in conversational search. And lastly, you can also see 8 out of 10 travelers are seeking assistance from some source of AI as they are planning their vacation wherever it is that they're going. So some stats here, but again, the emphasis that I'm just saying is that it is changing quickly, it is rapid, it is fast, and these numbers have changed since we talked about them in December. So if you could take us to the next slide, Britt. This is a really powerful chart. There's some small text on here, so it might be hard to see. But again, what I want to reiterate here, the biggest importance is AI results are no longer dominated by top ranking websites. So the biggest takeaway is AI is offering opportunity for everyone. So you do not have to be the dominating search result in Google search in order to be a cited source in AI overviews. So you can see that shift alone in the chart. We went from 76% to now 37% of ranking in the top 10 alone in organic search for some of these larger website companies. So if you're a smaller company, if you're just starting, if you're thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever because it's the foundation of SEO, don't sweat. This is changing, and this is changing for the better to be inclusive of everyone for this opportunity. So something that I definitely want to call out to some of you, big or small, as long as you are doing the things that you should be doing from a GEO perspective, you have equal opportunity to be a cited source in the AI overviews.
Yeah, and Hannah, I got a quick question for you, or maybe an opportunity to talk about something I think is pretty relevant here. You talked a good bit here. This is a great illustration of how it's shifting in terms of the ability to have a high ranking for an AI inquiry or a high ranking for a keyword, and talking about how there's opportunity on both sides of the ball, and they're connected, but not always directly in terms of individual opportunity. How are we right now for our marketing clients? Can you talk a little bit about the ways that we're highlighting and illustrating where their opportunities are for each independently and how we're tracking that?
Totally. I think if you want to kick us to, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but you want to kick us to the next slide, and then
Yep,
I can overview that.
absolutely.
So really quickly, what it is that we're doing to achieve this, the new search landscape, is essentially how we are formatting this content. And we're formatting the content. I think of it as very question answer format. In that format itself, think of BuzzFeed, making sure we're answering questions naturally, making sure you're exercising experience, expertise, authority, and trust, structuring it clearly in terms of bulleted list and giving complete answers. This just helps make sure that we are achieving that visibility. But in terms of measuring it, if you want to take us one more, not to go too quickly, but I want to make sure we talk about this. This is essentially how we are tracking. How do we measure success in AI? What are opportunities that we can find? That way, then you yourself can create these strategies for your business and know where you need to spend your time. So, our marketing clients, they do receive regular reporting, and we have these conversations with them in terms of what are those queries that are being searched that you're currently ranking for. So this screenshot shows a wide range of related search queries, whether that has to do with weather, things to do, just general area information. Like think of those things that people are commonly routinely asking, like what's the weather like in Siesta Key, Florida? What do I need to pack to go to the Blue Ridge Mountains? Those sorts of questions. Those are the things that we want to capture. But the biggest piece of this that is the most powerful is how do you know where to make sure you're covering all your bases? How do you know where to spend your time? What content do you need to be producing? Something that we have been working on internally is creating an AI gap analysis strategy. Using this gap analysis that is powered by these reports itself that we can feed to this tool that then helps us comb through everything that you're currently ranking for and identifying gaps for these search intent queries that people are searching for that maybe you're not represented in some way that then you are able to take this list and then take the list from there and say, okay, what content do I need to focus on to ensure that I am showing up for all of these queries? These lists are long. I think you would be pretty surprised as to what you are currently being cited for. And whenever you look at a list of 100, 200 plus queries, it can be overwhelming. It can be very overwhelming in a sense of where do I spend my time? What do I need to do? How do I make sure I'm showing up for all of these different things? This tool that we have created is essentially helping us comb through this data to say, here are the gaps that you are currently not being cited for. And based on that, then we're able to build a content strategy from that itself. Does that answer your
Mhm.
question, Britt? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just
Cool.
wanted to make sure you kind of illustrated
Really
that for
powerful
people on
tool.
here.
If you are a marketing client on this call, please talk to your client manager about this. This is certainly something that is newer that we are rolling out and really excited to do, and making sure that you're a cited source in all queries possible. This side here is just basically demonstrating the sheer power of this visibility in AI and how it can be used as a tool. So here is a listing that is on Airbnb. We are able to search one of these images that then can be sourced in the AI overview to say, hey, I see that this listing is on Airbnb, but actually the source of truth from this image is being stemmed from this direct booking website, which then allows you to understand there is an alternative way to book this property. Being able to tap into this and inform your guests of this, or just having this piece of knowledge in your back pocket, is extremely powerful, just in the sense of understanding that there is an alternative way to book this property instead of an OTA, instead of our Airbnb, instead of Verbo. You are able to search these things to then ultimately lead back to what I'm going to call the source of truth, which is your direct booking website. So this is a tool, something that I wanted to share. Britt, do you have anything to add on to this?
Yeah, I would just say that it's, we've seen a big trend over time of more and more people becoming aware of direct bookings and using that Google image search or Google Lens to kind of try to backtrack their way to where the actual direct booking site is. And the incorporation here of the AI mode and the way it's being inserted into the response with Google Lens really fast tracks that process, because now if they're looking for it, Google's smart enough to go and say, this is where this information is coming. This is where you can book it directly. If you switch from the all tab to the AI mode tab there and ask, who do I book this directly with? It's going to give you all that information as well. So just super handy.
Yeah,
I also want to
super.
call out that I know we are at time. And so a reminder that we will be sharing this recording. We'll be adding it on our YouTube. So if you need to go, you certainly can. I have a few minutes. So I'm going to stay late to answer any questions and make sure anybody who has anything gets it addressed. Hannah, do you have time for a couple more of your slides or do you need to go?
Yes, I would love to talk about my final and last slide. This is definitely something that is an extremely powerful stat. If you look here, on the left is our AI property chat. This AI property chat lives on all of our property detail pages. In this, user is able to go in here and ask questions as it relates to your property specifically. What these questions are entailing is essentially a summary of your descriptions that you have filled out in your software that feed through to our site. So if you have the information in that description, someone can ask a question about it and it's answered here versus them picking up the phone and having to call a reservationist or call you or bog you down with these questions. So some interesting stats here to look at is all the users on the site. There is a 0.8% conversion rate here. Non-AI chat users, there is a 0.7 conversion rate. AI chat users, that conversion rate jumps up to 2.5%. So I think largely this is just emphasizing exactly what I said earlier. Travelers are wanting to use AI, comparing to basically inform their decision and make the decision in a sense of what do they want to book. This is just emphasizing the intent behind people want to use this. People trust this. This is a trusted source for people to get the information that they need to feel confident to complete their booking. And I think, numbers don't lie. We see these numbers here. This is something that we track. Again, just to kind of call out, if you aren't already using our AI property chat, I would highly recommend it. You can certainly see the power behind it in a sense of conversion rate. And I know everyone is wanting to know how they can increase their conversion rate right now. This is just an incremental way that you can do that and also save yourself some time in terms of these questions that people are asking on a routine basis. So I think my final note and the biggest takeaway is, again, we're no longer competing to just show up in search results. We're competing to be quoted by AI in these answers on Google, Gemini, ChatGPT. If you just do one of these small things to incrementally move your business along to include this GEO opportunity to show up in these search results, there'll definitely be an impact in the long run. And that's
Yeah,
it for me.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that great information, Hannah. Amber, obviously a lot of great stuff in your portion of this today. We are at time for the day. I did want to bring up one question or maybe observation from Aaron Zimmerman saying that, the average length of stay showing so high in our beach markets and our data kind of conflicts with some of the things he's seeing with key data, VRBO, Zoom meetings, the Airbnb meetings, kind of suggesting like 6 to 9 days being an average length of stay. I'm curious if there's any insights y'all can share from the marketing side or what you're seeing in our bookings that would support kind of where that higher range is. The the note that I would add while you're kind of thinking about that is that you have to keep in mind that with our data here, we're showing what people are actually searching when they go into your website to look for properties. And while there's certainly a lot that can be deduced from that in terms of what people are looking for, and we've talked a lot about that, it's also important to keep in mind that sometimes people are in a habit, because I know that I personally do this, is looking at a larger window to then see what is available so that they can be flexible with their dates, which really emphasizes the importance of having flexible date search, of being availability driven in the email marketing that you send out, because you are going to make it easier to find what actually fits when someone has flexibility and let them kind of choose and go through those funnels. Where I would expect that the key data and more OTA driven data there is actually about average length of stay by bookings versus searches. Yeah, absolutely. Anything there though that I may have missed in that, Hannah or Amber, that you want to add?
I don't think so. I think you got that. You covered that pretty well.
Yeah, I mean,
Straight
I
from
guess
the
the only
horse's
thing that
mouth.
I would say is I wouldn't see it as a discrepancy, but more of an opportunity. If guests are searching for those longer stays, but even if they don't always book them, it really gives us a chance to promote that elevated stay value and offer incentives and just getting more information in front of them so that they will book later.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for anyone who is still on with us, which we really appreciate, thanks for staying on. I hope you got a lot out of this. I've thrown our email addresses in here in the chat as usual. Thanks for joining. And if you have any needs or questions, please reach out to us. Otherwise, we will hopefully be seeing you soon and in the future. Have a great rest of your week and a very profitable spring and summer. Bye bye.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.
Thank you.